Welcome to Ravenswood. Even the name sounded ominous. Nestled deep within the whispering woods, it was a town untouched by time. Ancient oaks, their branches heavy with moss, lined the streets. The air hung thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Something felt off. An unnatural stillness hung over the town. It was as if Ravenswood itself was holding its breath. The townsfolk were a reticent bunch. Their eyes, when they met yours, were guarded. They spoke in hushed tones. Their smiles never quite reached their eyes. It was unsettling. Ravenswood held secrets, dark secrets that whispered on the wind. At first it was just small things, a misplaced key. You'd find it in the oddest places, like inside a book or under a rug, places you were sure you hadn't been. The sudden creak of a floorboard in an empty room, a whisper of a name on the wind, quickly silenced. It was as if the house itself was trying to communicate, but its language was lost to time. The townsfolk dismissed it. Old houses creaked and groaned. They said it was just the wind or the house settling, but deep down everyone felt a chill that couldn't be explained away. People misplace things. It was nothing to be concerned about, yet the frequency of these incidents began to rise, and the explanations grew thinner. But the occurrences grew stranger. Objects vanished, never to be seen again. It wasn't just keys anymore. Family heirlooms, cherished mementos, even everyday items like spoons and combs disappeared without a trace. Shadows seemed to move in the corner of your eye. Footsteps echoed on cobblestones, but no one was there. The feeling of being watched became a constant companion, an invisible presence that lingered just out of sight. A cold spot settled over the town square, lingering even under the midday sun. It was as if the very air had turned against them, a chilling reminder that something was amiss. Fear began to take root, a seed of unease blossoming in the hearts of the townsfolk. Conversations grew hushed, and eyes darted nervously. The once tight-knit community now felt the strain of an unseen force, pulling them apart. The stranger arrived on a day cloaked in mist. Her name was Sarah, a young woman with eyes that held the wanderlust of a seasoned traveller. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, oblivious to the unease that permeated Ravenswood. She was seeking respite from her journey, a place to rest her weary head.
"Don't go out after dark," he warned, his voice a low murmur. "And whatever you do, don't talk to the shadows."
Sarah dismissed his words as the ramblings of an old man. Little did she know she had just stepped into a nightmare. The shadows lengthened with the setting sun. True to her nature, Sarah ventured out. Ravenswood's eeriness was palpable now. The wind rustled through the trees, sounding like whispered warnings. The air grew colder. She felt a prickle on the back of her neck, the unnerving sensation of being watched.
A swing set stood in the middle of the town square, its metal chains swaying rhythmically despite the lack of breeze. A chill ran down her spine as she heard the faint sound of laughter, high-pitched and filled with an unnatural glee, carried on the wind.
Terror, cold and sharp, pierced her heart. Something was terribly wrong in Ravenswood.
Desperate for answers, I sought out Mr. Jenkins.
He hesitated, his gaze darting nervously towards the door.
I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer.
With trembling hands, he revealed the town's dark secret.
Generations ago, our ancestors made a pact. They bargained with an ancient entity, a being of immense power that resided within the Whispering Woods.
In exchange for prosperity and protection, the entity demanded a sacrifice. Every night, as the clock struck midnight, it claimed a soul. The chosen one would vanish without a trace, erased from existence as if they had never been born.
Terror kept us silent, prisoners in our own twisted paradise.
Sarah's blood ran cold. She had stumbled upon a nightmare. The graveyard was not just a resting place for the dead, it was a realm of forgotten souls and untold stories. Each step she took seemed to echo with the whispers of the past, a chilling reminder of the lives that once were.
Driven by a morbid curiosity and a growing sense of dread, I visited the town's graveyard. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones, warning of the eerie silence that enveloped it. But I had to see it for myself, to understand the fear that gripped their hearts.
It was eerily silent. No birds sang, no wind rustled the leaves. The air hung heavy, thick with the weight of countless unspoken tragedies. The silence was almost deafening, a stark contrast to the vibrant life that once filled the town. It felt as if time itself had stopped, leaving only the echoes of sorrow behind.
The tombstones were ancient, their inscriptions worn away by time, but something was amiss. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, as if the very ground beneath my feet was holding its breath. Each gravestone told a story, but the words were lost to the ages, leaving only a haunting silence in their wake.
There were names etched into the weathered stone, but the graves themselves were empty. No mounds of earth marked the resting places of the departed. It was as if they had simply vanished, their very existence erased. The emptiness was palpable, a void that seemed to swallow all light and hope.
The pact was real, and the entity was meticulous in its cruelty. It left no trace, no evidence of its dark deeds. The graveyard was its domain, a place where the living dared not tread. As I stood there, I could feel its presence, a cold, unyielding force that watched from the shadows, waiting for its next victim.
Drawn by an unseen force, Sarah found herself at the edge of town, staring up at a dilapidated mansion perched atop the highest hill. It was a Gothic monstrosity, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at the town below.
Local legend claimed the mansion belonged to the entity, a tangible symbol of its hold over Ravenswood.
As darkness descended, she swore she saw a flicker of movement in the highest window, a silhouette, tall and gaunt, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. The entity was watching her, aware of her presence. Panic welled up inside her. She had to escape. With a gasp, Sarah turned and ran. She raced through the deserted streets, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadows seemed to reach for her, their forms twisting and contorting in her peripheral vision.
Whispers followed her, taunting her, urging her to give up.
She could feel the entity's presence closing in on her, its power suffocating. But Sarah refused to give up. She had to escape Ravenswood and warn others. She had to break the cycle. Hope, however, seemed like a flickering candle in the face of an oncoming storm. She stumbled and fell, her hands scraping against the rough cobblestones. Looking back, she saw a wall of darkness advancing toward her, its form writhing like a living nightmare. It was too late. The darkness enveloped her, chilling her to the bone.
Her scream died in her throat as she was dragged into the abyss, her struggles futile against the entity's overwhelming power.
Silence descended once more upon Ravenswood. The entity had claimed its due. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a golden hue over the quaint town of Ravenswood. The townsfolk went about their day, their faces etched with a carefully constructed facade of normalcy. They carried on with their routines, tending to their shops, chatting with neighbors, and pretending that everything was just as it should be. Yet beneath the surface, a current of unease flowed through the community. They spoke in hushed tones about the missing stranger, their words laced with a mixture of fear and relief. The disappearance was a grim reminder of the town's dark history.
Sarah's belongings were found scattered on the outskirts of town, a silent testament to her fate. Her bag, a few personal items, and a sense of dread lingered in the air, marking the spot where she was last seen.
The entity had been appeased, for now. The forest, with its dark and mysterious aura, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as if satisfied with the offering. Life in Ravenswood went on, a macabre dance between prosperity and sacrifice. The market bustled with activity, children played in the streets, and the town's heartbeat continued, albeit with a shadow looming over it.
The cycle continued, an endless loop of fear and despair. The forest, ever watchful, stood as a silent guardian of the town's secrets, its misty twilight a constant reminder of the pact. The town remained trapped, bound by the pact made generations ago. As dusk fell, the streets grew quiet and the shadows lengthened, enveloping the town in a shroud of mystery. Ravenswood, the small town with the dark secret, would forever remain a place of whispers and shadows. Its narrow alleys and old buildings held stories untold, and its people, bound by fear, continued to live in the shadow of the past.